If you don't want to spend the rest of your life having no money, working a job that you hate, and stuck in the same cycle as everyone else, the only thing you need to be focused on is making your first $10,000. My parents were immigrants, so growing up, I didn't have money, I didn't have connections, and nothing was just handed to me. But even then, I knew one thing. I knew that I wasn't going to stay stuck and be poor forever. So instead of worrying about making millions of dollars, I picked one simple goal: making $10,000. Now, at the time, that number felt like everything, but now at 25 years old, worth millions of dollars, I can say that the first $10,000 was the hardest money I have ever made, and it will most likely be the same thing for you. So if I had to start all over from zero today and make my first $10,000 again, this is exactly how I would do it, and I'll be breaking it down in 3 easy steps. Real quick, before we start, make sure you guys smash that like button, subscribe if you guys haven't already. I make videos all about money and different ways you can become rich, so if that interests you, consider subscribing. Okay, step number 1 is having some sort of income. See, when starting out, you need something that doesn't require a lot of money, but also puts a lot of cash in your pocket every single day. Now, I've tried thousands of ways to make money and realized everything comes down to just these 4 options. The first option is selling an in-person service, so things like personal training, delivery driving, dog walking, lawn mowing, junk removal, window washing, stuff like that. Now, on the surface, these sound basic, but that's exactly why people overlook them. These are some of the fastest ways to go from zero to cash. There's no algorithm you need to beat, there's no audience to grow, no inventory to buy. You solve a problem and you get paid right away. Startup costs are low, you get paid fast, and the margins are great. So if you have a skill, which everyone does, and maybe a couple of tools, you can start immediately. But here's the part most people miss. Because the barrier to entry is so low, supply is high, meaning anyone can just start this. That's why you can't just show up. You have to have some sort of strategy. For example, if you're washing cars, go to wealthier neighborhoods and look for signals. So is the lawn perfectly maintained? Is the house clean but the car isn't? That tells you everything you need to know. Your only job at the beginning is to find people who already have the problem and get paid to solve it. Now, as good as this is, there's an important caveat. In-person services are location dependent and time dependent. Your demand goes up and down. Some months you're booked solid and other months you're chasing work. And no matter how good you are, you can only work with one client at a time. That creates a ceiling. So while in-person services are incredible for getting started, they're not designed for long-term scale, which brings us to the next option: selling products. So where things really start to change is with selling products on the internet. This is drop shipping, print on demand, reselling, anything where you can sell to anyone, anywhere. Now, I've done this myself. I've ran multiple drop shipping stores selling everyday charger accessories to pet products, and while that made me really good money, the biggest problem I saw wasn't finding customers, it was managing the cash flow and seeing if a product is profitable or if I'm losing money. Every sale required an ad spend. Every order came with fulfillment costs and refunds and delays and chargebacks, and things just kept adding on and on. So instead of profits instantly piling up, my money stayed tied up in ads, platforms, and operations. It would take weeks and sometimes even months before you actually get paid out. And this is where a lot of people end up quitting. Not because it doesn't work, but because it requires time and testing, and you don't get paid right away. You have to spend before you earn. You test, you lose money, you adjust, and then that's when you can scale if it actually works. But if you can survive that early phase, selling products unlocks real leverage. Sales can come in while you're asleep. Your income is no longer tied directly to your income, and once your ads, suppliers, and systems are dialed in, this becomes one of the most scalable ways to make money. So yes, was it worth it? Absolutely. But just understand what you're signing up for. So that brings us to option 4, selling online services. And this is one of the most underrated opportunities for people to make money because of one simple shift we've seen over the past few years. There are endless online services you can offer, from copywriting, video editing, thumbnail design, ads, social media management, automation, consulting, virtual assistant, and the list just keeps going on and on. And here's why this option stands out. It's because you get the global reach of products, but the profit margins of services. With products, you might keep 20 to 30% profit margin if you're lucky, and most of that that ends up getting reinvested. But with services, you can keep 70 to 80%, and that money goes straight into your pocket. Even better, you can start getting paid from day one. Today, if my only goal was to make my first $10,000 as fast and predictable as possible, this is the path I take every single time. But how do you choose the right service to offer? Well, ask yourself these three things. What skills do I already have, or can I improve quickly? What am I willing to spend time on learning without burning out? And what problems do businesses have that are willing to pay to solve them? The sweet spot is where all of those three overlap. And this is where most people make the wrong move. They wait, they over prepare, they try to become perfect before they ever charge anyone. That approach guarantees you stay stuck forever. The goal at the beginning isn't perfection, it's exposure. So instead of waiting, set your prices slightly below market, get real world feedback, and focus on earning and learning at the same time. Now let's take this one level deeper, leveling up your income, because once you start making money, the next challenge is scaling it without working more hours. This is what I like to call the skill pyramid. 4 elements that turn any high income skill into a consistent $10,000 income. If you miss any one of these, everything falls apart. So element 1, positioning. Not all services are equal. The real money isn't in what you do, it's who you do it for. The highest paid services help businesses make more money. See, businesses don't think like individuals. If a business is making $20,000 a month, if they need to spend $5,000 to fix a problem, they'll do it instantly without even thinking twice if it makes them more money. And trust me, as someone who runs multiple businesses, there are always problems to be solved. Businesses always need more customers, better systems, better conversions from leads, stronger branding, more social media and marketing. These problems never go away, and they're always worth paying to solve. And the best part is some industries have more money to spend than other people, and that's who you want to target. A medical office, a law firm, a big e-commerce brand. These businesses operate on completely different budgets than a mom and pop shop or a small creator. If you target these businesses or people that are willing to spend more money because they have it, it'll be easier for you to make more money as well. This has nothing to do with learning new skills. It's about aiming the skills you already have at better targets. So instead of editing videos for small creators, edit them for big entrepreneurs selling products. Instead of making random thumbnails, become the go-to designer for one big creator or an established brand. It's the same skills, but different positioning with completely different income. Next, element 2 is going to be leverage. And this is where most people get stuck. You will never ever make $10,000 consistently without having leverage. Here's why. Businesses don't pay for effort, they pay for outcome. So the moment you stop charging for hours and start charging for results, your income will change. For example, if you run ads and charge hourly, clients will always want fewer hours so they can save money. So your value is capped before you even start. But if you charge based on the revenue you generate for them, the entire conversation flips. They stop asking how much do you cost, and they start asking how much more can you make us. That same thing applies to everything else, even social media management. If all you do is post and reply to comments, you're replaceable. But if you can show that your strategy brings leads, sales, or growth, you will become an asset. And assets don't get negotiated down, they get protected. And that is the part most people miss. The fastest way to raise your income isn't working harder or adding more clients, it's changing how you frame your value. So stop selling what you do and start selling what people can get out of you. Next, element 3 is reach. One of the biggest mistakes people make when starting out is believing they have to constantly chase clients. Cold DMs, endless outreach, emails, pitching people who don't really even need your service. Now that works, but it's the hardest way to play the game and get new clients. From day one, you should be thinking about how to make clients come to you. Anytime I'm looking to hire someone, whether it's a designer, editor, writer, assistant, the first thing I do isn't check a freelance marketplace. I search online. So TikTok, X, YouTube, Instagram, Google. I'm not looking for the cheapest option. I'm looking for the person already showing the skill that I need. And more often than not, the best ones aren't even selling it yet. They're just posting their work consistently. People don't hire the most talented person. They hire the person they've already seen prove themselves publicly. So if you say you edit videos, don't just say you edit, show transformations. If you design thumbnails, explain why your designs get clicks. If you're learning social media, document the process of growing an account from zero. You don't need a massive audience, you need the right audience. A few hundred targeted people seeing your work every week beats thousands of people who don't even care. And finally, element element 4 is organization. And this is where almost everyone falls apart and the whole triangle breaks. I've worked with dozens of people across multiple different skills and industries, from copywriters, editors, designers, developers, and I can tell you something with certainty. Most people don't lose clients because they're bad. They lose clients because they're unreliable. They miss deadlines, they're late on their replies, they lose details, they have a horrible communication, and talent, no matter how good you are, doesn't fix that. The people I've paid the most money to over the years aren't always the most talented, but they're the easiest to work with. They always hit their deadlines, they communicate very well, and they never make me wonder what's going on or leave me clueless. That's professionalism, and it's very rare. Being good at your skill gets you the first payment, but being reliable gets you paid over and over again. Okay, so everything to this point is about making your first $10,000, but what you do after determines whether you stay stuck or you actually build wealth and become rich and successful. Look, the cars, the designer clothes, the expensive meals, none of that matters if your money isn't working harder than you are. This is a difference most people never understand. The rich spend their income, the wealthy deploy it. So once you really start making money, the game changes. Now you're not just chasing more income, you're learning on how to keep it, grow it, and protect it. I personally spread my money across different levels of risk, starting from stable and boring, then gradually moving over into some higher risk opportunities. First is the foundation of everything, which is index funds or ETFs. They're boring, they're simple, but they work. I've made a lot of money just from consistently investing in broad market index funds over the years, and the best part is they require almost no work. So instead of trying to pick individual stocks who are going to be huge winners, you're buying pieces of the entire market with hundreds of different companies, multiple industries, built-in diversification, so your risk is more spread out instead of having one single company. And historically, the S&P 500, which holds the 500 of the largest companies, has averaged a return about 10% per year. And with that data, here's a fact. So if you invest just $500 a month when you turn 18 and stop when you turn 40, you would have only invested about $132,000. But it'll be worth $480,000 because of all the compounding. And let's say you do nothing going forward, you don't put any more money in, and you just let the money compound. By the time you're 60, you'd have over $3.5 million. Isn't that crazy? And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to invest as much as I can every single month because I know it will pay off later on. I've personally invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in ETFs and index funds. And I know they're not exciting and they don't move a lot, but they do make consistent returns. And that's what I want. Moving up the ladder of risk, investment 2 is individual stocks. This is where investing starts to feel more hands-on and honestly more interesting. Individual stocks are a great way to start investing, especially when you're working with smaller amounts of money, because they force you to actually understand the market, not just participate in it. When I first started, I genuinely enjoyed picking stocks and digging into how businesses worked, reading the financials, understanding revenue, margins, growth. It was a whole bunch of stuff, but the only reason I got interested in that is because I invested my money. If I didn't put my own money into it, I wouldn't have even looked into all this stuff. But because of the psychology with spending your money, you want to know where it's going and how you can protect it. So individual stocks can be powerful early on because they teach you a lot. But of course, individual stocks come with more risk than index funds. But if you're allocating smaller amounts, that risk becomes education, I feel like. You get to see how companies react to news, earnings, and market cycles without putting your entire portfolio at risk. And another advantage is concentration. With index funds, even if one company performs really well, it's only a small piece of your whole portfolio or that ETF. But with individual stocks, if a company does really well, you get to see those returns right away. But the trade-off is obviously there's more risk associated with it. There's more upside, but there's also more downside. If you want the brokerage I use to invest in, I'll put the link down below. It's super easy to use, and I think they're giving away some free stocks as well if you sign up, so I'll put it down below. And finally, the most riskiest part of my investments is going to be crypto. And personally, I'm very heavy into crypto. It was actually the first thing I was introduced to while I was still in school, and I fell down this huge rabbit hole early, and I was just drawn into it because it felt different, it was fast moving, and it was a lot of opportunity back then in 2017. But I do want to be very clear about this. Crypto is a lot riskier than stocks or ETFs, and that's not a bad thing. That's just a trade-off you need to understand. With higher risk comes higher reward, and for me, crypto has delivered both. I've made my highest returns in crypto, but I've also had my biggest losses there as well. That's the reality of the asset class, and that's why it's the most riskiest from all those other investments. So I just invest a fixed amount every single month into a small number of projects or cryptos that I genuinely believe in, and I just let time do its work. And also, if you guys do want free crypto, Coinbase, which is the place I use to buy all my crypto, is giving away up to $2,000 if you sign up and just deposit $50. So if you are interested and want free money, because I don't know who does, I'll put a link down below to where you can sign up. But that was it for today's video. Make sure you guys subscribe for all things money, and as always, keep hustling.